So in the last tutorial, we talked about routes and all the cool features about routes, how to group routes, how to make routes more dry. So in this tutorial, we're going to talk about controllers. Now we have our controller here, which is a string-based controller, maps to this show action. And we created another one here, but we didn't create that yet. So for controller actions, you can name these whatever you want. You can name this single, show route, show blog posts. The naming convention is entirely up to you. There are a couple of standards that you might want to use, but there's no hard limitations on it. So if we open up our welcome controller, let's talk about controllers for a bit. And before we move on, let's just, since we have no users, we don't want this authentication middleware, so we can just get rid of that. So if you're coming from a framework, like I think Pylons has it, Laravel, and Ruby has these concepts of controllers, right? This MVC architecture, these model view controller architectures that Masonite uses as well. So something else that Masonite uses that other frameworks do have is the concept of an IOC container, or an inversion of control container. So what inversion of control allows you to do is it allows you to very, very loosely couple your code from your implementations. You want to loosely couple your code because at any point in the future, your dependencies can change on a dime, and you don't want to tightly bind your application to your implementations in a way that limits your choices on future development. So for example, if you want to have a rendering engine which might convert HTML into Markdown, in the future, if you want to now convert that into RST format, then all you do is you change the dependency in the container and it will change it all throughout your code. So that's loosely coupling your code to your implementations. So how Masonite does it is you import the class that you want at the top. So we need the view class and the request class. And we put it into our parameter list. Now when Masonite calls this controller action, it says, oh, you need the view class and the request class. Let me go get that for you from the container and I'll inject it for you here. So Django has the request. Think of this as a view. So Django sort of hard codes the passing of the request object into the views. But with Masonite, it's a lot more fluid. So we're saying that we want the view class and the request class and injects it for us. If we don't want anything, we don't need to pass anything in. And it'll look at this action and say, oh, you don't want any dependencies, then I'll just run this method as is without injecting anything. So this is also called resolving from the container. We're resolving these classes from the container. It might be a strange concept to get at first, but once you start using it a lot, you'll start to understand more and more and how it can be beneficial to your application. So now that we have this explained, if we move down here, we have this view.render method. So we're getting this view class, we're passing into a variable called view, lowercase, and then this lowercase view is calling this view class, which has a couple of methods on it, such as a render method. Then in here we pass in the template that we want. So we want the welcome template. All templates are located in resources, templates, welcome template, or welcome.html. And we have this app variable here. Going back to our controller, we passed in an app variable here, which actually gets the container here, the app container, and it makes the key of application. So when we bind things into the container, we bind it with a key value pair. It's just a dictionary, really. So some dependencies have certain keys in the container. So you might bind the view key to the actual view class. So we have this application key, which points to the object or the module, really, of config application. So if we look at our template here, we have app.name as a constant. If we open up our configuration, we have this, which shows the Masonite 2.1 that we saw on the welcome page. So very, very, very simple. Nothing too crazy. And once you use this more and more, you'll understand it more and more. And something else we could do is instead of returning a view, we can return either a dictionary or a list. And if we open that up, we can see that it now returns a JSON response. So very, very simple. You can see that controllers it's just a basic class. There's currently nothing too crazy about them. So that is it for controllers, and I will see you next tutorial.